It's always live. Hello. Welcome. We're live. It's so funny. You press the button and you're like, is it live? Is it not live? Are we going?
What's happening? Yeah.
Welcome to the Space Between. My name is Michele Laine, and joining me today is a very special guest, Kristin Akbasli. And I wanted to make sure I said that right because it's such a beautiful last name.
Thank you. You got it right, pretty much right.
Yay, I'm so glad. Thank you for being a guest on the Space Between. This is one of the few episodes that we have, but starting this summer, I'm doing more series with more guests. And so it's exciting to be expanding and sharing the wealth and knowledge and amazingness of all friends and connections. So I'm really glad that you're here. Kristin, we started some conversation earlier this week because we've been on a journey together on weight loss, on health, on well-being, on fitness. And I wanted to share your knowledge and your expertise because it's really helped me shift so many things in my life. And I have been an advocate of weight loss or just keeping a healthier body for decades. But there was something about the timing when finding you and applying your knowledge and your systems that completely gave me freedom I hadn't experienced anywhere else. And part of that was part of the conversation that we wanted to start off with today. But I want you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about you. And then we're going to come back around to that posing question, that posing statement that shifted everything.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, Michele, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here. Always excited to engage with more conversation with you. You know, I know we work together to help you with your health goals and your fitness goals. And I'm so glad that we met at the right time. It was back in November, I remember, right around the holidays when people want to be able to enjoy the holidays and have food freedom. And as you said, you had been on this journey on your own for like a decade. And I know you had tried different things, but I know the main reason we work together and a lot of people come to work with me and create my weight is because they want food freedom. This whole element of being able to eat the foods they enjoy without guilt and in a way that supports their goals, whatever they might be, weight loss, weight gain, maintenance, health, whatever it is. And so, yeah, that's what Create My Weight is all about. So I help people really achieve food freedom. I help them find their fitness, like what fitness that works for them, what they enjoy, what helps with their, building muscle, building longevity, and then also just dealing with life, right? Dealing with all these life circumstances. I know, Michele, you do a lot of work with that with your clients, but I also want people to realize like how we do one thing is how we do everything, which is what we're going to talk about today. And so Create My Weight, a lot of the work we do in Create My Weight is mindset, right? And it's all about like how to actually eat the right foods and actually commit to our fitness plan without letting life get in the way.
Absolutely.
And that's what CW is.
I love that. And I think that's what really attracted me to you when I did the challenge with mutual friends. And it was just the curiosity kept rising. And I do a lot of work on mindset and somatic healing and different things in the body as well for the same reason that how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so you and I had that conversation and we realized this parallels not just in health, but in other areas of our life. And what I love about it is there's all that space between where the mind starts to take over and tell the stories, or the limitations start to arise, or we start feeling uncomfortable and think we can't do something. And that keeps us from the goals that we want, and understanding that it can be simpler when we understand that the guilt can leave.
Yeah.
And so there's so many different ways of how we're supposed to eat, so that we're told, eat this food, do this diet, do this way, that we don't even trust ourselves anymore. And so when we apply how we do one thing is how we do everything, to that factor of when we get really truthful with ourselves in those places we are maybe not as strong on the trust that we want to be, that there's opportunity and possibility for building that in a new way. And so, both of us being coaches in different industries as well, like it never is too late to listen to something new, to apply something different, or to be open as a student into what might be different, that one shift that can help us soar in the direction we want to go. So it's so good. The food freedom piece was everything for me because the guilt was really there. And so I want to talk to that. Like, what do you see most often, especially with women? I know you have men in your program as well. Are there parallels there with the guilt and the association with the relationship with food?
Absolutely. A lot of the people I work with, both men and women, they've done all different kinds of diets. You know, they've cut carbohydrates, they've cut fats, they've, detoxed, they've, just juiced for a week or something, they fasted, they've done all of this deprivation. Okay. And while that might work in the short term, right, the long term, we know that's really not sustainable. And so oftentimes the story is created over the years, right? And that's where this guilt comes from, is that we just buy into this story that we've written over the years. And the story I hear a lot is, I can't lose weight unless. I can't be healthy unless I give up carbs, I give up fat, I give up alcohol, I give up blah, 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 because this is a story. And so when we do eat those foods or drink alcohol, whatever, we feel guilt. And that's where the guilt comes from, is in the story we've been telling ourselves. And so the whole purpose of Create My Weight is to create a new story.
Right.
Well, I can eat carbs and lose weight. I am able to drink in moderation if I choose. It has to come from choice, not from guilt, not from pressure, not from beliefs that have been bestowed upon us. It's about creating our own beliefs in what foods serve us and what foods don't serve us.
Oh, I love that. And it's not living in our past, which is something that I teach in the brain game over and over again. It's like these stories we create a drama loop that keeps us going from victim to rescuer to bully, and oftentimes all three in our own mind. So if we just beat ourselves up enough, or we pretend that we don't have to make the change, or we, worry about everybody else except us, then we don't have to look and see at those places that would be like preventing us from our own actions. So the guilt keeps us in this cycle, in this relationship of living in the past and not being willing to move in the future. And the willingness is the key, the commitment, the decision, and the willingness to just be open is how we make that shift. And now a lot of times we have to look at things that we don't want to see.
Yeah.
But that's where the magic is. And what I love about looking at it in food is, all right, we don't often pay attention to what we're eating, how we're eating, when we're standing in the kitchen, how much we're putting in our mouth before the meal, what our meal looks like, how we're treating that in our body. And it all matters because our body talks to us as well. So I would love for you to share, even like on the fitness side of it too, these constructs that we can start to break apart, and discovery and playfulness and being willing and open to just seek something different, and how effective that can be.
Yeah. And this is why I'm so glad that you had me on today, Michelle. Thank you, because the space between, between our meals, between our workouts, between all of our activities, that's the key to successful weight loss and health journey, is because oftentimes we're so focused on what we're eating, or what workout we're doing, or like, are we doing all the right things? But what's happening in the downtime, right? Because oftentimes that's where things slip. And that's why people are not successful. So for example, I had a couple, Mondays are a busy day for me because I'm talking with clients and they have parties over the weekend, and like, they might go in with a game plan, like, oh, I'm going to, make healthier choices. I'm not going to drink as much. I'm going to make sure I do my workouts. And sometimes things slip between the cracks, right? They tend to maybe eat more than they wanted to, or they went for too many chips and salsa, whatever it is. And so this is where we kind of like dial back, and we're like, well, what happened before we went into the chips and salsa? What were you thinking? What was the story you were telling yourself about the chips and salsa, right? What made you go against the plan in a head? So it is kind of like scaling back. And so that's one thing I really encourage everyone that I work with, and anyone watching this video as well, is to, starting to change the way we look at food. It's like, well, how are those chips serving me, right? It's like, and I'm actually doing a whole talk tonight for my clients about the carb mindset, right? So it's like, how do we look at carbohydrates, and not that we can't have them, but how can we have them and look at them differently? So that's what the space between is all about. Like how we look at food before we actually go and eat it, or how we look at a workout before we actually do it. Oftentimes people don't exercise. It's not because of time. I hear that all the time before they work with me, and they're like, okay, I have time. It's not about the time. It's how we look at the workout, or how we look after the workout. Am I going to be too sore? Am I going to be tired? Do I have enough time? It's the space between the workouts.
Ooh, It's the space between pre-deciding it's not going to work and doing the work to find out how it feels in our body when we're there. Like that's everything. So back to how we do one thing is how we do everything. If we're struggling in a place of health, where might this be showing up in money? Where might this be showing up in relationship? It's all relationship. It's relationship with food, relationship with self. Because what also happens when we have this guilt is we turn around and then we shame ourselves for having had the guilt.
Yeah.
And it's so, we don't often know that that's actually happening because it's so automated in our mind. And our mind has the ability to put this on autopilot. So until we're willing to go in and interrupt that cycle and make the decision that it could work, that this could be possible, we stay stuck, and then we blame the workout program, we blame the diet, we blame the things. And I guess the importance of having this conversation is, there's that certain sense of self-responsibility that can free us to all kinds of things that we didn't think we could do before. But when we can hear ourselves almost being stuck in indecision and should I do this, should I not, and all the reasons why it's not going to work, it's your body screaming, in my opinion, for you to make a decision.
Yeah.
To just decide. And what if you just decide it's going to be good and it can work and that the support is okay? Because I think the other thing that parallels with that is I have to do this all by myself. And so we don't tend to ask for the help or the resources or the support, even though we really know we need that. And so the investing of self, of time, of being willing to look at these spaces, of being willing to invest energetically and emotionally into a program, it can feel so life-changing when we see ourselves on the other side of it because we've bet on ourselves and we haven't been in practice of that. And so these little steps that we can do every single day can play into that space between we're talking about and shift the story and become evidence when we're aware of it that it can work, that it's going to take time, that we're loving ourselves enough to step in, to lean into it. And it's really been beautiful to watch, like the thing with carbs that you're talking about. I know for me, I had a story, one that really loves to run, about carbs being bad.
Oh yeah, I remember.
So it's just easier to restrict and deprive of carbs in general and then wonder why, you're over here feeling bad and guilty about all the things you ate. And all carbs aren't bad.
Right.
And so this is a really beautiful conversation and opening up just one small facet. And you're having this conversation tonight. So I want to make sure we put the links down below. Oh my gosh, when you hear this information, you can see yourself and not have to feel bad. Just be your observer in it and go, oh man, me too. Right? Like, yeah. There are times you've taught me all these substitutions for pasta, and I hadn't had pasta in forever, even if it was gluten-free, because I have blood sugar issues and I'm in my 50s and things just, some of it's stored, some of it's fact, like things just don't process like they used to. And it's just allowing that space energetically for the body to go, it's okay. And now that I have these substitutions, it can be savored and you can enjoy these meals. And I still find sometimes that I'll be sitting there with like noodles because the food is so good and so tasty, it feels like it's supposed to feel guilty. And those are the moments where there's opportunities for us to look at that and take a few minutes and go, oh, that's an old story. That's old fragments.
Yeah.
That can be cleared. And you teach that so well in your program. But I think as humans, we tend to just brush it over like it's not important. So talk to that for a little bit of what you've witnessed and what you've seen transpire and transform through this effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I want to backtrack to what you were saying in regards to like the guilt, right? And that one of the best things we can do is really invest our time and energy into the space between, right? And understanding our thoughts and what's happening between like the meals and the workouts. But, the foundational emotion is fear, right? Yeah. Fear is the foundation of all these other emotions, guilt especially, because we eat the carb or whatever it is, for example, and then we feel guilty. But the reason we feel guilty is because we're afraid. We have fear that we're not going to get to our goals because we're eating these foods or because we can't control how often we eat, and this is why sometimes people will not bet against themselves.
Right.
right? They won't bet against themselves because they don't trust themselves.
No.
And that is where the transformation happens. And it has to start with the mindset of my mission is to trust in myself. Because once I trust in myself, the fear will subside, right? And that's when I'm going to improve my relationship, not just with food, but with myself. And that's when I'm going to get to my goal and stay there.
Yeah, and it opens us to a conversation of now I get to decide what feels good for me.
Yes.
Like, here's the information, because we've talked about this before too, like with workout times. I'm still here. It's June, and I'm still working out with you, and you work out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, which is 5:30 a.m. my time. And I like to show up where I thought before I couldn't do it. I just didn't want to. And now I want to show up, but I'm learning that 4 days a week for me to show up at 5 a.m., depending on what else is happening in life, doesn't always feel good in my body. So I get to watch the replays, which I love. But it doesn't mean don't not do the workout. It just means make it work for me. And that's where like the guilt story can come in to be like, well, if it's not this, then it can't be this.
Right.
And we get to learn with that trust that we can trust ourselves to do that replay, to reach out with the support, to ask for the help, right? And I think it's really important too, because I learned this through working through neurotransformation and observing my own self. I think you're right with the guilt being fear. But I think there's a deeper component to it. I'm just going to open up for a second. That's what I do.
Yeah.
It's not always the fear of failure. Sometimes that's at play. It's the fear of us beating ourselves up. To hear ourselves beating ourselves up for another yet failed attempt. So it's like the mind chatter part that feeds the guilt, that creates it, because it's self-imposed. No one else makes you feel guilty. No one else makes you live in the shame. And everybody has some element of it. And I think when we think that we're separate from it, we can just understand that it's just coming up to be seen so we can do something with it. Because when we shove it down, it builds back up next time twice as big. And so the fear can sometimes feel like I can't make it through, but it's just because we're not used to looking at it from that concept of, oh, I didn't realize that I was punishing myself and I was restricting myself and that I would beat myself up for not meeting my high standards, usually in perfection. I mean, recovering perfectionist. And when I realized that observation, I could set myself free and just playing and just making new data and finding new evidence and loving myself just a little bit more for the choices I was making. And I love that you play into that so much, as well as like, if your body and you're listening to it doesn't feel great today, do what you can do. Find what you can do. And so we're taking those can'ts and that mindset and shifting it to what can, but being willing to observe all these other places where that might be true and where we might be complaining about the results we're getting when we can truly just look at it a little bit differently, like from a 360-degree view, and give ourselves more options.
Yeah, right. The more options we give ourselves and the more we trust ourselves, that's where the freedom comes from. That's when we're able to let go. And that's, how we're going to build trust in ourselves over time. Right. So for you, for example, like you were saying, like some days, like you'll want to get up at 5 o'clock and work out with us. Right. And then some days you're like, you know what, I'm going to honor my body, do what I feel today, and I'm just going to do it later. But you get to choose. And the outcome is the same.
Right. The commitment to self, the prioritizing of that desire is where the money is where the freedom is, right? And I think as people who grow up being maybe people pleasers or just wanting to do it right or get the A, like I am all of those things. And I've realized that the freedom in choosing that and knowing that we can trust ourselves in doing that and making that commitment a priority and understanding that, hey, today may not be that hour, but there's always 10 minutes. There's always 15 minutes. And the joy that can come, I love moving my body. I definitely don't love not moving my body because I don't feel good about me. I didn't keep the promise I made. But there's that gray area, that space between the promise. As long as you're doing it, showing up, you get to decide today what that feels like. And did the result feel good? And then tomorrow, do you want something more? Or did that suffice? Because it's the habit, it's creating the new habit is where the outcome starts to show up in that sustainability for us. Right. So getting rid of the mindset of one and done, but being willing to discover ourselves in that new place and who we're being while we're eating, while we're working out. And are we doing it for the reasons that someone else said to, or because we feel in our body it's time to make that shift? That's where the willingness comes from. And no motivation will last longer than the willingness to want to keep going.
Right. Exactly. What I've learned over the years, and before I built Create My Weight, I was a personal trainer. I was doing nutrition coaching, and that kind of nutrition. I called it at the time nutrition coaching, but like now I would not call it nutrition coaching, because at the time I was just giving out meal plans. Like, okay, you're gonna eat this for 7 days. Like, these are the foods you can eat. You're gonna really minimize these. This is how you're gonna eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And what I found over the years is people don't want to be told exactly what to eat all the time. People crave choice.
Yeah.
Even though they're sometimes afraid of choice and they don't trust themselves with choice. I've had people on their very first call with me, they sign up for CMW, they're like, I want to be told exactly what to eat, right? And I'm like, that's not the long-term play here. I know that's what you want right now, but I see the big picture. And so I want to empower you to make those choices. Right. That's what food freedom is. And so the more choices we give ourselves, the more not only liberated will we feel, but the more successful we're going to be. So it's really, and that's the commitment. I find that people, I'm sure you find this too, Michele, like people are not, it's not that they're not willing to commit or to change, but it's just like they're not willing to let go of fear, right? Or like that.
Yeah. And I think it's we don't know what we don't know. And it never gets taught to us in this manner. We don't get personal development 101 in school, which I think would be fantastic. And imagine the possibility that's in that when we know how our brain is wired and how we are wired and what's happening in our body that goes beyond just it's not working or it hurts today. Like there's always it's all connected.
Yeah.
And when we can look at these things in food freedom and understand that, these choices are so important in all things that we do, that we can take our power back, that we can make the decision. It's opening because we feel sometimes that we can't, like the world decides, or we're at the whim of our emotions, we're at the whim of how things are, our circumstances. And those that empower us, that inspire us, have gone beyond to do something we didn't think we could do. But the difference between the two things is the willingness to dive in and take the commitment beyond the decision. And we just got back from retreat in Arizona, and we really looked at this as coaches and as entrepreneurs. We can decide that we want to do something, and then we can stay in the loop of deciding and never committing that leaps us into that motion. And so even as conscious decision makers, we were like, oh, here's that place where we're still sitting in loop of decision. Like we're getting really good at going nowhere because we decided, right? Yeah. So it takes that commitment. It takes the knowing that there is a choice and doing something is better than nothing, because otherwise we're not honoring anything that we promised within ourselves. And that becomes the habit. And then the cycle returns over and over again. We're either the bully to ourselves, needing rescued from someone else, or a meal plan that works, the absolute blue pill versus red pill, or we're the victim of our circumstances. And so when we can understand that these cycles exist in all humans at all times, in all areas of our life, there's so much empowerment and excitement and bliss. And yes, it might be uncomfortable as you're going through it, but when you're on the other side of it, looking at how you might have been or how you used to handle things, and you can find that piece of strength, it empowers you to that next level, that next up impact, that next step. What do I want to do next? And it's exactly what you're talking about. And we're looking at it in one respect of food. And so I totally agree in how we do one thing is how we do everything in all the other areas of our life. Even if we're not conscious about it, there's usually one or two places we're wanting change, but we don't understand that we're just not clear what we want, and we haven't decided to make the commitment.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I love how you talked about indecision, because this is something that I see a lot in CMW, and I always say this: indecision comes from wanting to be comfortable all the time.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is the space between is not always comfortable.
No.
But the space between, and like really like sitting and understanding the space between, like, how do I look at food? Why can't I, if I make plans to meal prep and I don't, why not? If I planned to work out and I didn't, why? Like, what was happening? So really
what
getting
was going on in the body that
Yes.
stopped you from figuring it out? Because we often think it's a figure out problem, but that's the mind, right? And that's like language to me of, I just have to figure it out. I'll sit here till I figure it out. Well, that's language of indecision. And it's your body just wanting you to say, make a decision. So like, I love telling people now, indecision, when you find yourself confused or an indecision, you really just have made the decision to be indecisive.
Yeah. Bingo.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so when you are aware of that and go, oh, I just need to make a decision. Like, what is the next thing?
Exactly.
So
And exactly. And what you were saying earlier about like how we do one thing is how we do everything. Like I find that people that are indecisive about doing a workout or eating a healthy meal, or should I go for health seconds or not, like they're indecisive about so many other things in their life.
Mine was showing up in my business. So here I am working on my health and it's all good. And I'm really happy. And I'm still making these next layer decisions. And I'm like, oh, business is going. It's good. I got a little comfortable. Next level decision. There it is. Just still like, okay, then what are the actions I'm pretending I'm taking in my mind versus what I'm actually doing? And when I had that revelation, it opened up so much, and I was able to go, oh, okay, this isn't so scary. It's just me deciding for me what's next instead of pretending that I was doing the things. And it literally was an awareness that your mind can create stories, and they're not always true. And sometimes it can convince you you're doing the things, and you look back and go, I haven't walked all week long. Like, I felt like I've been getting all these walks in, and it just knowing that is so much freedom in itself. And when you can apply it to that beautiful relationship with food and where it can be so fulfilling because there are so many substitutions and there aren't never again. It's just, what do you want right now? And are you willing to be in alignment with that?
Yeah, right? Exactly. And I love how you said, really taking an honest look at yourself. Like, yes, and this happens a lot in our work because people will say, well, I'm eating healthy, I'm moving, but like I'm not losing on the scale or I'm not seeing change. And then I'm like, let's take a deeper look. Like, and then once we dig, we're like, oh wait, like there's still things that are happening. And this is why
that happened for me this last 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm doing good. Like the workouts are up and like, I'm really not like, it's not moving the way I want, even though I feel good. And I'm like, oh, I'm eating a lot more fat, even though it's healthy fat and it's good. Like for my desire of where I'm going, I wasn't doing all the things in the right order, like not even right order, in the order that is going to amplify that result for me. And I kind of giggled. I'm like, it's not wrong. It's not right. It just is. And so I was able to go, yeah, I was pretending that wasn't a thing, but it is. Or the water, like not getting all my water in. It all matters.
Yeah, it all matters. And these are all opportunities. That's the key, because oftentimes people will say, oh my God, I struggle with water. I struggle with too much fat. I struggle with movement, whatever. But it's like, instead of the word struggle, let's use the word opportunity, that quick mental shift. Opportunity for growth. So like this week, I'm going to focus on drinking my water. I'm going to keep it by my desk. I'm going to bring it with me, right? Or whatever we need to do, whatever choice we make, but we need to make the decision. Like, I'm going to focus on this week. This is an opportunity for me. This is not like an obligation. It's an opportunity.
You choose. You're at will. You get to choose what is going to be possible and what is going to be lack. And either one is okay. Just own the choice. Right? And what we were talking in one of my groups about, this isn't the experience I want to choose. And literally saying out loud, this isn't the experience that I desire. And the very next question is, what is the experience you desire? Which leads to, how do you want to feel? And what's the next action?
There you go. That's perfect. And, for example, one thing in like CMW, this, Michelle, we do log our food, right? At least, especially in the beginning, not so much like later on, but, and one of the reasons why we do keep track of what we're eating is because we want to feel better. And we want to feel like we know what food serve us. Right. So we have to look at it. So it's like, and that's why, like, here's an example of our food log. And it's like, it's not being the food police. I say this too, like I'm not the food police, but I'm the food detective, right? I'm going to figure out like what works for me, what foods serve me, what foods don't, what foods bloat me, which ones make me feel icky, which ones make me feel sluggish, which ones just like don't work for my body. And the only way we can learn is by like making a decision. Okay, I'm going to take a look at this.
Yeah. Oh God. And that's the whole thing. Like there's six layers of transformation. And this is what we teach. Well, I teach and we teach, but it's like, there's the awareness that something needs to shift. And then there's the acceptance that that's where I am. And then the moves, and the most important piece next is the self-responsibility. What am I willing to do about it? Then there's the inspired action that leads me to a new choice, right? Then there's the transmutation, which is where most people back off the fence. They're on the fence and all they gotta do is hop over. And they're up there going, it's kind of hard. I don't want to give up sugar. Like all the things, all the resistance rises up. That's the moment you're right there. Feel the resistance. Open that up. Look at it. What did we say earlier? Like shine a light on that. Be willing to see yourself in that truth. Sit with it for just a minute or two. It's going to pass and you're going to get to the other side of it. But what happens is we get scared and we back up and we never give ourselves the opportunity to be on the other end in a different awareness. And so when we do, which is what your program does so beautifully, you transmute through that next level. You witness the transformation, and now you have a whole new awareness, not the same as the beginning.
Right.
But all of those steps happen, and lots of times they happen in the moment of decision, and they can go very fast. And sometimes we get stuck in one of those layers because we're just not moving forward or we're scared, right? Like, but it's so beautiful because we get the benefit and the freedom of looking at ourselves in a new place, doing things we haven't done. And I think health and fitness are one of those beautiful areas, like a mirror. I can see that in my body, and I can feel that in my body more than any other space, more than money. And we can see money come in when we have that block. We see it not come in, right? But in our bodies, we literally get to watch the transformation and appreciate that, which is so beautiful. And I love the synergy and the work that you do and how it's applied to my life, even with all of the knowing, and we never know. We always have room.
Yeah, always.
So good. And anything else that you want to leave with? What is your vision what is your global vision for the world? You're in health and wellness. So yeah.
My vision for the world is for everyone to realize that they do have a choice. Nobody is stuck eating a certain kind of way, right? Unless like you have extreme allergies or something. But at the end of the day, to truly have freedom. And I think you and I are with the same vision. We want everyone we work with to have freedom in how they live their life, right? And of course, that really comes from here.
Right.
Because I always say, health and weight loss is 80% mindset, 20% food and fitness.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm on a mission to prove that. Because I feel like one of the biggest disconnects in my space is that everyone is so obsessed with food and fitness, and then we ignore the other stuff.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem. And so I'm on a mission to show that how we do one thing is how we do everything, right? So when people do struggle in other parts of their life, when it comes to making decisions, commitment, fear, guilt, all these things we talked about today, it's going to show up in their health and their fitness. It's inevitable.
If it's in the room, it's in other places, right? Like if it's in this relationship, it may be showing up in other relationships as well, which is so powerful. It doesn't have to be scary. It can just be observation and desire for something more. It's okay to want something more. And I love that your philosophy is not one size fits all. It's inclusive of everyone. Everybody's different. Everybody's body is different. and they get to fine tune it that works for them. And you're there with that support, which is so beautiful. So I just wanted to honor you with that. And thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and having this conversation and opening up to that space between. We're going to put all your links below. You guys, talk about your challenges. Sorry, let's go back really quick before we end it up. But I want to talk about your challenges because I wouldn't have known you if I hadn't said yes to a challenge.
Yeah, no, Michelle, I'm so happy she joined a challenge I did back in November. I do them a few times a year. But during the 2-week challenges I run, my next one's going to be starting July 12th, I want to say. And I'll give you the exact dates, Michelle. But for 2 weeks, it's a 2-week commitment, and we get moving more. So we do have workouts. We also do teach new recipes, and this summer's challenge, it's going to be about like light summery dishes. So things you can bring to barbecues. If you're on vacation, how to make healthier choices, or how you can still enjoy, your favorite foods in a way that supports your goal. So again, like, we really do try to show food freedom, during these challenges, and to get people to move in ways I didn't think they could, and really just start to develop these habits that they didn't think were possible. So that's what we do during the challenges.
I'm grateful for you. I didn't think I was going to enjoy online workouts when COVID hit, and I had a little resistance to it, even though I have a gym in my garage. But the support, the community, the fun, and just having everybody, I have like this new family as well. And it's just fun to share this side of myself that I love so much with others who are passionate about it. And it inspires me to keep going. And your inspiration is always a welcome light in my life. And it's just been fun to kind of get to know each other that much more on this journey, and understand that, like, we just need all of us out there helping everybody understand what they didn't know before, so they can find themselves in the way that they want to see themselves and live. So
yeah, I think connection is such an important part of the space between. Like, people, especially like with the past year, right, all the craziness happening, I feel like connection is so empowering. And so when we feel connected within a community, we're more likely to build trust in ourselves, because we have internal support, right? We build on that, but then we also have a community. It takes a village, right?
So yeah, and it just lets us know we're not alone. And then honestly, if you're anybody like I've been, like, my life thinking I had to trudge through it by myself, like I had to figure it all out by myself, we don't. So that's the biggest thing I can take away in this transformation that I've had in my own life, is there are people there for us. There are people there who know more than we do, who can help guide us, who want to hold the space for us. And that is where our biggest transformation lies, in being willing to do something different than we haven't done before. So thank you so much for being here. And it's been a fun conversation. I'm so excited to have had you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always a fun conversation with you, because we always just kind of bounce off. We have similar, backgrounds. So it's so nice to see you. And thank you and I love seeing you in the workouts. I always get super excited. I see Michelle at 5:30 in the morning, her time, and 8:30 our time. And I'm always like, she is so committed. She's on a mission. So thank you for continuing this journey, and I love seeing you grow.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm like looking at my mouse right now, like, all transparency, dogs bark, and my mouse is not working. So I'm going to try to end this.
Technology, who knows?
Like, please don't have died. I don't see my mouse in this moment. Oh my gosh, seriously. That's so funny. Okay, well, you can sign off if you'd like.
I will for sure. All right, you guys. I think I know how. Hold on.
You might be able to leave the room. I'm going to have to, I don't know.
I'll just exit out.
Okay. So thanks so much. I'll see what I can do about stopping this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week on The Space Between.